Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. Coming up in the next hour, US President says Israel Prime Minister's approach on Gaza was a mistake, calls for a ceasefire. Spain, Australia and Qatar support a Palestinian statehood. US hosts Japan's leader for talks on joint development of military equipment, says the partnership is unbreakable. Kishida to address the US Congress on Thursday. President of the Philippines also to join trilateral summit. Exit polls show that South Korea's main opposition party and its allies are going to win a majority in Wednesday's legislative election. Campaigning for India's election picks up pace. Prime Minister Narendra Modi holds a rally in the southern state of Tamil Nadu. Samajwadi Party releases its manifesto. And countries across the globe celebrate Eid-ul-Fitr. India's president leads the nation in greeting fellow citizens. India will celebrate the festival, which marks the culmination of the fasting month of Ramzan on Thursday. Amidst intensifying efforts for a ceasefire in the ongoing Israel-Gaza conflict, the United States has announced plans for an in-person meeting between Israeli and US officials to discuss operations in Rafah in the coming weeks. Meanwhile, US President Joe Biden has criticized Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's actions in Gaza, labeling them as a quote-unquote mistake, especially condemning the strikes that resulted in the deaths of 7 aid workers last week.
The White House has announced plans for an in-person meeting between Israeli and US officials to discuss operations in Rafah in the coming weeks.
I believe it's going, from what I've been hearing from our folks at National Security Council, is going to be in a couple of weeks. But again, those open line of communication, there's constant communications happening every day. But as it relates to this particular conversation, when they're going to be here in person, members of the Israeli government, that's going to happen in a couple of weeks.
US President Joe Biden voiced concerns over Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's actions in Gaza, particularly condemning strikes that resulted in the deaths of 7 aid workers. In an interview on Tuesday, the president called for an immediate ceasefire and urged for unhindered access for food and medicine aid into Gaza.
I think what he's doing is a mistake. I don't agree with his approach. I think it's outrageous that those three vehicles were hit by drones and taken out on a highway where it wasn't like it was along the shore. It wasn't like there was a convoy moving there, etc. So what I'm calling for is for the Israelis to just call for a ceasefire, allow for the next 6-8 weeks total access to all food and medicine going into the country.
India also called the UN Security Council resolution demanding an immediate ceasefire in Gaza during the month of Ramadan a positive step.
India's position on the conflict has been clearly articulated on more than one occasion by our leadership. There are 4 key points here. 1, the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas has led to a large-scale loss of civilian lives, especially women and children. The resulting humanitarian crisis is simply unacceptable.
Aid continues to flow into Gaza. The French military dropped 7 tons of aid over northern Gaza, while 8 trucks were observed entering Rafah. Israel reported a significant influx of aid, with 468 trucks moving into Gaza on Tuesday, marking the highest volume since the conflict erupted.
All right, joining me from Tel Aviv is my colleague Alex Caddy. Alex, what more can you tell us about aid meant for Gaza?
Well, certainly we've seen an increase in aid entering the Gaza Strip, so getting through those Israeli checkpoints. We understand it was around 480 trucks that went through just yesterday. That is the highest number since the atrocities of October 7th and since the start of Israel's war in Gaza. So that is certainly an increase, but it isn't anywhere close to the bare minimum, which is 500 trucks a day in normal times. But clearly, with the destruction and the humanitarian catastrophe on the ground in Gaza, what is needed is a lot more. And you heard from President Biden just a few moments ago very much urging Israel to allow a lot more aid to get into the Gaza Strip. So there's a lot left to be done. Of course, we also know that a lot of the aid agencies, most notably World Central Kitchen, have had to suspend some of their activities and are limited in what they can do. The maritime corridor, which had been a glimmer of hope, we understand still very challenging for it to resume, so there is still a lot of challenges. We also know that the Israelis have pulled out their forces from Khan Yunis in the center of the Gaza Strip, and people are being told to return there, but they are returning to ruins. They are returning to streets, entire streets that have been destroyed. They cannot put up tents because there's rubble everywhere. It remains a very challenging situation indeed. So the humanitarian situation in Gaza is still catastrophic from what we understand, even if there is a slight uptick, a slight improvement in aid getting through those Israeli checkpoints.
Even as aid enters Gaza, Alex, is the Israeli military keeping up its attack on targets inside the enclave?
Yes, absolutely. We've heard reports of airstrikes and artillery, and actually news breaking just in the last few moments, the 3 sons and 3 grandchildren of Ismail Haniyeh, who is the political leader of Hamas, we understand, were killed in an Israeli drone strike just in the last few hours. Traveling in the car in northern Gaza, they were struck by an Israeli drone. Ismail Haniyeh, the political leader of Hamas, confirming that strike has killed his children as well.
And also, before we let you go, Alex, U.S. pressure seems to be telling on Israel. For one, Israel announced that it is opening new routes for delivering aid to Gaza. But is there any official word yet on Israel's plans for Rafah?
Well, the message from Israel is very clear. They will go into Rafah. They will have an operation in Rafah. Prime Minister Netanyahu saying a date has been chosen. Now, the defense minister has since said a date has not been chosen. The Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, of the United States, saying he does not know what date that is. So the U.S. has not been briefed on what that date might be. Clear.
All right, apologies for the interruption. That was my colleague Alex Cadier reporting there live from Tel Aviv on Israel-Hamas conflict. And joining me now from Washington, D.C. is another of my colleagues, Benji Hire. Benji, if you are with us and can hear me, what explains the shift in the U.S. stand on the Israel-Hamas conflict?
Frankly, it is the conduct of the Israeli Defense Forces of late, the way in which the Israeli government is handling this war. We heard a clip of President Joe Biden just a few moments ago in an interview with Univision, one of the largest Spanish-speaking networks here, in which he says that he was outraged by, for example, the killing of 7 international aid workers last week, that he thinks that Israel's manner in which it is conducting this war is a mistake, and as we heard, calling for that 6 to 8 week ceasefire. I mean, the comments, the remarks from the President, the White House, explaining frankly how open and candid the President now feels he can be about Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, his Israeli counterpart. He's previously called Israel's actions in Gaza indiscriminate, over the top. He's expressed deep concerns of late about the potential Israeli offensive into Rafah, the city in the south part of the Palestinian territory where more than 1 million residents are still sheltering. As we heard from Alex before, some have returned further north in the strip, only to come across ruin and devastation. And he says, also, Joe Biden, that he could reassess US policy if Israel does not show meaningful change. With all that said, when we speak of a shift here, frankly, practically, The US is still exporting arms to Israel. There doesn't seem to be any sort of pause in those exports despite congressional pressure. And that has sparked discontent within the US administration's own ranks. There have been senior officials that have come out in the past 24 hours to say that those arms sales should be stopped, that Israel, quote, is doing the bare minimum. Although we've heard contrasting opinions from other members of the administration, Jake Sullivan, for example, the National Security Advisor, who says all this talk of a ceasefire, well, actually it could happen if Hamas were the ones to budge and release some of the hostages that they are still holding almost in excess of 6 months on since that terror group invaded Israel on October 7th.
Benji, looking at Biden's criticism of Netanyahu, looking at global reactions pouring in the wake of the attacks, the killings of aid workers in Gaza, is the tide turning against Israel in the West, or is the West's support to Israel ironclad? I ask you this. Allow me a moment to put it into context for our viewers joining us from around the world. Now, some of US's allies, such as Australia and Spain, say they could consider recognition of a Palestinian statehood. Also, there's a matter of the Palestinian Authority's request for full UN membership as well.
Well, let's take those through one by one. Let's start with the sentiments that we've heard expressed from Australia, for example. Its foreign minister says that a Palestinian state would, quote, strengthen momentum towards peace. The US sentiment so far has been that there needs to be a peace agreement before any conversation can be held about Palestinian statehood. We'll come on to that in just a moment in regard to the United Nations. That's Australia's position. Spain's, well, its Prime Minister says recognising a Palestinian state is in Europe's geopolitical interest. That is a noteworthy shift. He continues to say, this was in an address to Parliament, that Israel's disproportionate response, quote, risks destabilising the Middle East and the whole world. Those words will be heeded by other Western allies, including many that sit in the United Nations General Assembly. We are expecting at some point a possible vote there on Palestinian statehood, but for it actually to be passed by the United Nations as an entire body, it needs the approval both of the General Assembly, where all nations sit, and also the Security Council, which is just a select few countries, including some of the world's major superpowers, US and China included. And we understand that as it stands, the United States would still veto any proposal to declare a Palestinian statehood within the United Nations bodies because of what I mentioned before, that a peace agreement needs to come first between Israel and Palestine before there can be any conversations about statehood.
Benji, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Benji Hai reporting there from Washington, D.C. And still to come on DD India News Hour. The top court of the U.S. state of Arizona upholds an 1864 law that bans nearly all abortions. Ireland's parliament elects Simon Harris as the country's new and youngest ever Prime Minister. And a Canadian investigation report says India did not interfere in its elections.
Opposition stuns Erdogan with historic victory in Turkish local poll. Will the defeat force Erdogan to reset his foreign policy? Will artificial intelligence enslave humans? And crypto king Sam Bankman-Fried will grow old in jail, so what lessons should we learn from his conviction? Watch Connecting the Dots to get the full picture every Friday at 8 p.m. IST on DD India.
As India decides in the world's largest election,
we help you feel the pulse of the nation.
I am Sakal Bhatt.
I am Shubhendu Ghosh.
This election election season, join us on a journey of India.
Discover the colors of democracy. Watch Poll Pulse on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. US President Joe Biden warmly welcomed Japan's Prime Minister Kishida Fumio to the White House, reaffirming the enduring strength of the US-Japan alliance and signaling a renewed commitment to deepening the bilateral cooperation on a range of issues. Take a look at the next report.
Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida began his visit to Washington on Tuesday. The visit highlights the shared concerns of Japan and the US about Chinese military action in the Pacific. The meeting between the two leaders underscores the critical importance of strong ties between the United States and Japan.
64 years ago, our two nations signed a treaty of mutual cooperation and security. President Eisenhower said its goal was to establish an indestructible partnership between our countries. Today, the world can see that goal has been achieved, and that partnership between us is unbreakable. Now our two countries are building a stronger defense partnership and a stronger Indo-Pacific than ever before.
Ahead of Kishida's visit, the US ambassador to Japan announced that the United States is set to adopt a substantially altered military command stance at Japan's proposed new military command center. This adjustment aims to enhance coordination and bolster deterrence capabilities amid growing Chinese pressure. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida said he saw opportunities for more collaboration with the United States in next-generation computer chips.
The theme for today's roundtable is cooperation in critical and emerging technology, in areas such as innovation, clean energy economy and supply chains, and on such technologies as semiconductors, AI, quantum computing and biotech. It is increasingly important for our two countries to build resilience in our economies and together drive growth for the global economy.
President Joe Biden aims to honor a long-standing ally whom he regards as pivotal to his Indo-Pacific strategy. Kishida is the fifth global leader to receive the prestigious recognition of a state dinner from Biden's administration since assuming office in 2021. Rahul Upadhyay's report for DD India.
And Caroline Malone joins us now from Washington, D.C. for more. Caroline, talk to us a bit, if you will, on the likely outcomes from the Biden-Kishida talks.
Well, we can certainly see that the US-Japanese relationship is going from strength to strength. When Biden greeted Kishida at the White House just a short time ago, he said that this is a sign of a cornerstone of peace, security and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific and around the world. So really showing how important that relationship is. In terms of what we're likely to hear from a press conference due to take place in less than an hour, there will be likely defense pacts that are announced, including potentially that the US command center in Japan is upgraded, that the US and Japan work on a collaboration in air defense systems. The US already has one with Australia in the region. And also there's some likelihood in the future that Japan could be part of an AUKUS Stage 2 project. Right now that involves the UK and Australia in nuclear-powered submarines, but some suggestion from the Japanese side that they could be part of a collaboration going down the line. In terms of space collaboration, these are two countries that are likely to work together. The US is trying to return a person to the moon. Japan wants to have their first person on the moon, so we could see some NASA collaboration between the two. And also in the tech industry, and crucially in semiconductors, which are a hugely important chip used in a lot of our high-tech products, some idea that there'll be research done and potentially projects between the US and Japan. So really this bilateral relationship is just getting stronger.
And Caroline, looking ahead, what's on the agenda of the US, Japan and Philippines trilateral summits on Thursday?
Well, absolutely. These are three countries, along with Australia, that's been holding military drills in the South China Sea just over last weekend, so recently. So really, there's already some kind of unprecedented collaboration between these countries. when you hear from the Philippine side, from President Marcos, he's been talking about the importance of strengthening economic relations between these countries, but also about peace in the Indo-Pacific. And that is certainly something that we're likely to hear from these three sides, increasing defense collaboration, particularly at a time in which the Philippines is feeling increasing pressure from China. There's been a lot of tension in the South China Sea from Chinese movements in their waterways. So certainly these three are on the same page in terms of pushing forward and trying to achieve prosperity and peace within the Indo-Pacific.
Caroline, thank you for now. Appreciate it. Caroline Malone there reporting from Washington, D.C. And talking about Philippines, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. of the Philippines on Wednesday said that the upcoming trilateral summit with the U.S. and Japanese leadership in Washington, D.C. on Thursday will include an agreement to maintain security and freedom of navigation in the South China Sea. Talking to media, Marcos said that the meet is mainly an agreement to strengthen economic cooperation among the three countries. He added that during the meeting, defense and security ties will also be discussed, but that is not the main intent. Now, President Marcos's visit to the U.S. is a follow-up on Biden and Marcos's last meeting in 2023. And ahead of the trilateral summit, U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said that more joint patrols can be expected in the South China Sea in the near future after drills by the U.S., Australia, the Philippines and Japan last weekend. Warships from the four nations staged the exercises on Sunday following stepped-up Chinese pressure on the Philippines in the disputed strategic waterway. Sullivan says that the U.S. and its existing Australian and British partners in the AUKUS Security Pact would explore possible Japanese involvement in Pillar 2 of the project. And staying in the Indo-Pacific, counting of votes is underway in South Korea's parliamentary election, with exit polls predicting a majority for the main opposition Democratic Party. Official results are not expected to be released until the early hours of Thursday local time, but exit polls in previous elections have given a broadly accurate reflection of the results. More in the next report.
Members and supporters of South Korea's main opposition Democratic Party erupted into cheers as they watched exit polls following the parliamentary elections. The atmosphere was electric, with optimism running high as exit polls predicted a potential majority for the Democratic Party.
We tried our best to do politics that uphold the will of the people, but the results of exit polls are disappointing. However, we will wait till the very end for the final results of the vote counting while watching the people's choice.
However, the ruling president Yoon Suk-yeol faced a challenging landscape. Despite entering the third year of his 5-year term, his administration grappled with persistently low approval ratings. Upon assuming power in 2022, President Yoon had promised significant reforms, including tax cuts, regulatory easing for businesses, and bolstering support for families in a rapidly aging society.
I think the current government is heading in a very wrong direction. So I believe the right people need to be in politics. I think there needs to be some change, some transformation.
In a surprising turn, a liberal splinter party led by former Justice Minister Cho Kuk emerged as a dark horse in the elections. Projected to secure a dozen seats, this third-party force stood poised to influence the balance of power within the assembly.
I pay a lot of attention to the policies that were proposed, but this time it felt like it was all just fighting and gossip, which was quite disappointing. So I want the current system led by the two major parties to be broken, and I voted for the third party, hoping for some practical policies that would truly benefit the common people.
As South Korea awaited the official results, the nation braced for potential political realignments and the dawn of a new era in its parliamentary representation. The outcome of these elections would not only shape the trajectory of governance, but also hold implications for the country's socio-economic landscape in the years to come. With Bureau Inputs, Amish Mahajan's report for DD India.
And as DD India's Chris Gilbert reports, local media predict a blow to the ruling People's Power Party and its president, Yoon Suk-yeol.
the ballots are now officially being counted, and exit polls suggest that the final results may well show a significant victory for the opposition Democratic Party and a worse defeat than expected for the ruling People Power Party, and a blow to the presidency of Yoon Suk-yeol, who is a member of that party. Now, his presidency is not at stake in this election, but what is at stake is the amount of power that he holds and the amount of power that his party had. It was already a minority in the parliament, and the results of this election really determine whether Yoon Suk-yeol is going to sit out the rest of his 3 years of his term as a lame duck president with another minority government, or, as some exit polls are suggesting, a much worse situation for him, that the Democratic Party actually and coalition partners actually succeed in attaining a 2/3 majority of parliament, which some exit polls are forecasting. Now, if that happens, it effectively means that the president loses his veto power. He can still veto any legislation that goes through that opposition majority parliament, but that 2/3 parliament, that 2/3 majority would give the opposition the power to veto his veto, and therefore being able to pass effectively anything that they like. It also gives them the power to change the constitution and to pass motions of impeachment against the president and the lawmakers in the parliament as well. So this all depends on the final results, which are being counted at the moment. It was a much higher turnout than expected. About 30% of votes were cast early, the highest number of early votes ever cast in a South Korean parliamentary election. There was high anticipation for this poll, which does now turn out to be looking like a significant defeat for the People Power Party and a significant victory for the opposition Democratic Party. Chris Gilbert in Tokyo reporting for DD India.
Right, moving on, Arizona's top court on Tuesday upheld an 1864 law that bans nearly all abortions. The Arizona Supreme Court ruled 4-2 in favor of an anti-abortion obstetrician. The court, however, also put its ruling on hold for the moment and sent the case back to a lower court to hear additional arguments. The ruling was focused on a law on the books long before Arizona achieved statehood. It outlaws abortion from the moment of conception, except when necessary to save the life of the mother, and it makes no exceptions for rape or incest. Doctors prosecuted under the law could face fines and 2 to 5 years in prison.
Is extreme and hurts women. And the near total Civil War era ban that continues to hang over our heads only serves to create more chaos for women and doctors in our state. As governor, I promised I would do everything in my power to protect our reproductive freedoms.
And denouncing the Arizona abortion ban, the U.S. President Joe Biden said on Tuesday that millions of Arizonians will soon live under an even more extreme and dangerous ban. Biden, in a statement, said this ruling is a result of the extreme agenda of Republican elected officials who are committed to ripping away women's freedom. Across the Atlantic, Ireland's parliament has elected Simon Harris as the country's new and youngest ever prime minister, officially taking office in Dublin to succeed Leo Varadkar following his surprising resignation last month. Harris ran unopposed to replace Varadkar as leader of the ruling Fine Gael party, and the final formalities were completed in the Dáil, which is Ireland's parliament. Harris was elected to parliament at 24 and appointed to cabinet before he turned 30. Before Harris, Varadkar was the country's youngest ever leader when first elected at age 38. And India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi congratulated Simon Harris on becoming the youngest ever Prime Minister of Ireland. In a tweet, he said, and I quote, "Highly value our historical ties that are based on shared belief in democratic values. Looking forward to work together to further strengthen India-Ireland bilateral partnership," unquote. And now take a look at some more stories making news around the world. An Icelandic volcano erupted last month for the fourth time since December and continues to spew smoke and bright orange lava, spreading the active lava to the south of the crater. The Icelandic Met Office could not predict the end of the volcanic eruption but said it could continue for a longer time with a constant flow of lava or stop in the near future. Kenyan conservationists fret about licensed hunters across the border in Tanzania, which are emerging threat to the elephants that are crucial to its tourism business. Conservationists and Kenyan officials have urged Tanzania to restrict trophy hunters to its heartland. Tanzania's wildlife regulator and its government did not comment. According to reports, Apple has ramped up its iPhone production in India, hitting a remarkable $14 billion in the last fiscal and doubling its output in the country in what could be seen as a diversification in manufacturing beyond China. The manufacturing in India has picked up since 2017 because of various production-linked incentives for more than a dozen key sectors, attracting several gadget makers to set up shop in the country. And still to come on DD India News Hour. Update on India's general election as campaigning picks up pace. And Apple ramps up its iPhone production in India, hitting a remarkable $14 billion in the last fiscal.
Regional parties call the shots in the Northeast. Will local issues play high over national issues? Will Sikkim, Meghalaya and Arunachal Pradesh go with the tried and tested, or will they look for change? On the Great Indian Election, what are the issues that matter in the three northeastern states? On Thursday at 8:30 p.m. IST and 1500 hours GMT, only on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. A quick recap of the headlines. US President says Israel Prime Minister's approach on Gaza was a mistake, calls for a ceasefire. Spain, Australia and Qatar support a Palestinian statehood. US hosts Japan's leader for talks on joint development of military equipment, says the partnership is unbreakable. Kishida to address the US Congress on Thursday. President of the Philippines also to join trilateral summit. Exit polls show that South Korea's main opposition party and its allies are going to win a majority in Wednesday's legislative election. And campaigning for India's election picks up pace. Prime Minister Narendra Modi holds a rally in the southern state of Tamil Nadu, and Samajwadi Party releases its manifesto. All right, let's now get you the latest on the world's largest democratic election in India. So campaigning for India's election picks up pace. Parties across the political spectrum are reaching out to the electorate in full campaign mode as the nation braces itself for the first phase of elections beginning on the 19th of April, followed by subsequent phases culminating in the counting of votes on the 4th of June. The next report tells you more about the heat and dust of the campaigning.
With less than 10 days to go for polling to commence for the first phase of Lok Sabha polls, campaigning has peaked up across the country with both the ruling and opposition parties leaving no stone unturned to woo the voters. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi held a rally in the southern state of Tamil Nadu. He hit out at the opposition, saying that under the ruling DMK, Tamil Nadu is not getting a chance to prosper and the youth of the state is suffering.
तमिलनाडु के लिए एक डेवलप भारत का नेतृत्व करने का समय है, लेकिन डीएमके तमिलनाडु को पुरानी सोच में, पुरानी पॉलिटिक्स में फंसाकर रखना चाहती है। पूरी डीएमके एक फैमिली की कंपनी बनकर रह गई है। डीएमके की फैमिली पॉलिटिक्स की वजह से तमिलनाडु के यूथ को आगे बढ़ने का मौका नहीं मिल रहा है।
The Prime Minister also addressed a gathering in Mettupalayam town in Tamil Nadu. He also addressed a rally in Ramteg, Maharashtra. India's Home Minister Amit Shah campaigned in West Bengal's Balurghat. Addressing the gathering, Home Minister Amit Shah committed to stop infiltration in the states of West Bengal and Assam under the BJP government.
क्या ममता दीदी घुसपैठ बंद करेगी क्या? करेगी क्या? वो घुसपैठ बंद नहीं करेगी, क्योंकि वो घुसपैठी ही तो उनकी वोट बैंक है या नहीं है? तो घुसपैठ बंद कर सकते हैं नरेंद्र मोदी, और बंगाल में भारतीय जनता पार्टी की सरकार कर सकती है।
India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh held a public rally in Saharanpur city of the northern state of Uttar Pradesh. He's also visiting Bulandshahr and Sambhal. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, while addressing a press conference in Bikaner, said that India previously endured terrorism originating from across the border, but emphasized that this tolerance has ceased. The opposition camp is also not far behind when it comes to reaching out to the electorate. Congress leader Jairam Ramesh hit the campaign trail for the Congress party in Kohima in the northeast Indian state of Nagaland. On the other hand, Congress National General Secretary Mukul Wasnik campaigned in Gujarat.
A section in our manifesto on senior citizens, persons with disabilities and LGBTQIA positive. And what we have said in para 11 is after wide consultation, Congress will bring a law to recognize civil union.
भारतीय जनता पार्टी का अपने ऊपर का विश्वास पूरी तरह से खो गया है। ये क्यों ऐसा कोई करता है कि दूसरे दलों के लोगों को तोड़कर अपने में शामिल क्यों करते हैं?
The Samajwadi Party released its manifesto on Wednesday. It promised a caste-based census by 2025. But away from the heat and dust of campaigning, 116-year-old Santoshi Beva is all set to cast her vote in the parliamentary elections in the Bagulamari area near Dhubri district of West Bengal. For Beva, age is just a number. She waits eagerly to cast her vote in every election, and this time is no exception. The Election Commission of India has made elaborate arrangements to ensure free and fair polling. And on the 4th of June, the votes in EVMs will be tallied to determine the people's trust and confidence. Bureau Report, DD India.
Now, the world's biggest party, the BJP, is competing against its own performance of 2019 in the western Indian state of Rajasthan, says Vinay Sahasrabudhe, the party is in charge of the elections in Rajasthan. Now, Rajasthan has 25 seats in the lower house of the country's parliament. The first phase starts on the 19th of April. DD India's Vishal Baristow has more.
Election campaign is in full swing in Rajasthan. Rajasthan goes to poll on the 19th of April. That is the first phase. And I have with me Mr. Vinay Sahasrabudhe, who is party in charge for BJP, and he is looking after election campaign in Rajasthan. Let's talk to him and find out. Sahasrabudhe ji, what kind of feedback did you get, because you've been traveling all over the state?
See, our party is known for politics of performance. There is no other political party that can even talk about the P of performance. But we perform, and therefore we seek mandate from the people. And as you will see in this particular region, that whatever the assurances that we had given, where for Karoli, Dholpur, whether it was the question of widening of the railway track or having quota for various sections of the society, or the ERCP, or ensuring that there is no paper leakage insofar as competitive exams are concerned, we have delivered in all fronts. At the same time, we have a very strong organization here. So our organization is very sound, very healthy, and that emboldens our confidence. And third thing is the supremely important reason behind the leadership of Prime Minister Modi's ability and his performance At the same time, more importantly, the kind of confidence that he evokes in every other individual, whether they are poor or rich, whether they are from the urban areas or from rural areas, everybody is looking with expectations, looking forward to the very able, firm, decisive leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Damodar Das Modi.
Now you heard the party in charge, Vinay Sehestra-Buddhe. He's saying BJP is competing against its own performance of 2019, and that says it all. With cameraman Ramakant in Karoli, this is Vishal Baristu for DD India.
Now, Andaman and Nicobar, along with Lakshadweep, is truly India's hidden coastal treasure. Lakshadweep is the smallest union territory in India, while Andaman and Nicobar is the maritime route in the Southeast Asian region. Take a look at the two archipelagos as they go to the polls on 19th April.
The archipelago of Andaman and Nicobar Islands is one of India's union territories located in the Bay of Bengal, comprising about 836 islands spread over an area of 8,000 square kilometers. Situated approximately at a distance of about 1,400 kilometers from both the Indian cities Kolkata and Chennai, the Andaman and Nicobar Islands are divided into 3 districts with Port Blair as the administrative capital. The group of islands, rated high on the tourism list because of its natural beauty and pristine beaches, has been seeing a surge in infrastructure upgradation works in the recent years. These include projects like underwater fiber optic projects, GPS motion sensors, automated weather stations, solar energy plants, tourism infrastructure, and upgraded military bases. With a population of about 434,000, residing in 31 out of the over 800 islands, about 312,000 registered voters are exercising their franchise this time, which includes 162,000 males and about 149,000 female voters. 3 voters are from the third gender category. During the 2019 elections, the lone seat was won by the Indian National Congress. The other prominent political parties in the archipelago are Bharatiya Janata Party, though other parties including Bahujan Samaj Party and the left parties also participate in the polls. Election is being closely monitored in the Union Territory, which is strategically important for India, particularly because of its location, as its northern point is merely 22 nautical miles from Myanmar and the southernmost point is about 90 nautical miles from Indonesia. The Andaman and Nicobar region is also an important maritime route in the Southeast Asian region.
Puducherry is a charming coastal town located in southeastern India. Also known as the French Riviera of the East, it is famous for its serene beaches, a Parisian vibe, frothy coffee, chocolates, and a lot more.
The Indian Union Territory of Puducherry is geographically unique. It comprises 4 unconnected districts: Puducherry, Karaikal, Mahe, and Yanam. Puducherry and Karaikal are surrounded by the state of Tamil Nadu, whereas Mahe is surrounded by the Kerala state and Yanam by the state of Andhra Pradesh. A former French colony, Puducherry, which was earlier known as Pondicherry, became a part of India in the year 1954. Famous for its beaches and French architecture, the Puducherry district attracts both domestic and international tourists. In the 2024 general elections, Puducherry, which has 1 seat in the lower house of the Indian Parliament, will go to polls in the first phase on the 19th of April. The Union Territory has over 1 million voters, out of which over 0.48 million are men, nearly 0.54 million are women, while more than 150 belong to the third gender. Puducherry is currently being governed by the National Democratic Alliance, which includes the All India NR Congress and the Bharatiya Janata Party. Other prominent parties in the fray are the Dravid Munnetra Kazhagam and the Congress Party. In the 2019 general elections, the lone Lok Sabha seat was bagged by the Congress party. The 2024 polls in the Union Territory is majorly seen as a three-cornered contest between the Congress, BJP and the All India Anna Dravid Munnetra Kazhagam or the AIADMK. Election Desk, DD India.
And still to come on DD India News Hour. Russia deals with severe floods. Water south of the Ural Mountains spread to more regions. And Muslims around the world have begun celebrating Eid-ul-Fitr, one of the biggest celebrations in the Islamic calendar.
As India decides in the world's largest election,
we help you feel the pulse of the nation.
I am Sakal Bhatt.
I am Shubhendu Ghosh.
This election season, join us on a journey of India.
Discover the colors of democracy.
Watch Poll Pulse on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. An official investigation into the allegations of foreign meddling in Canada elections has concluded that India did not try to interfere in Canadian politics. A panel of senior Canadian officials monitoring the 2021 elections in the country were not informed of any attempt by India to influence national elections, the probe found. However, the Canadian Intelligence Agency found that China did interfere in Canada's last two elections, this according to testimony in an official probe. This comes days after Canada Security Intelligence Service, or the CSIS, alleged that India and Pakistan attempted to interfere in the Canadian elections that took place in 2019 and 2021. Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's Liberal Party won both the elections held in 2019 and 2021. Under pressure from opposition legislators unhappy about media reports on China's possible role, Prime Minister Trudeau had set up a commission to look into foreign interference. As Russia deals with severe floods, waters south of Russia's Ural Mountains are rising and heading towards more regions. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said that the forecast was not favorable and President Vladimir Putin was constantly receiving updates. Earlier, Russia and Kazakhstan ordered more than 100,000 people to evacuate after swiftly melting snow swelled mighty rivers beyond bursting point in the worst flooding in at least 70 years. In Kazakhstan, more than 96,000 have been evacuated so far.
The Kremlin says the situation in the flood-hit areas is very tense. The level of water in the Ural River in Orenburg rose above 10 meters. That's far over the critical mark. Evacuations of residents are ongoing and local authorities have promised to pay compensations to those affected by the massive floods. Some 2,000 buildings and 2,500 private households were flooded there. The water level has started to drop in the Orsk region, and rescuers of the Emergencies Ministry are delivering electric generators, fuel, drinking water, food and basic necessities to the areas cut off by the flood waters. The water level on the Tobol River is approaching the dangerous mark of 1,060 centimeters, and more water is expected in the Kurgan region over the next 4 days. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov warned that water levels continue to rise and could affect more regions. Russia's emergencies minister and the head of the Ministry of Construction are in the affected areas, coordinating emergency efforts and meeting local residents, but many are not convinced that they will receive enough help. Dasha Chernashova in Moscow, reporting for DD India.
Muslims around the world have begun celebrating Eid-ul-Fitr, one of the biggest celebrations in the Islamic calendar. Eid-ul-Fitr, which means festival of the breaking of the fast, is celebrated at the end of Ramzan, a month of fasting for many Muslims. It's a time for spiritual reflection and to show kindness to one and all. DD India's Mir Mercury has more.
The sighting of the moon in the sky marked the end of holy month of Ramadan. Muslims around the world celebrated Eid-ul-Fitr on Wednesday, a joyous occasion filled with prayers, feasting and festivities. In many West Asian countries, Eid-ul-Fitr began with special prayers at mosques where worshippers gather to seek blessings. Mosques in the war-torn countries of Syria and Iraq witnessed a huge turnout of the faithful offering prayers and expressing their relief about the improved safety in their countries.
We congratulate Muslims around the world for Eid-ul-Fitr, and I ask God Almighty to bring this Eid back to us every year in safety. We honestly noticed a tangible change in the security situation in Iraq, and we ask God to keep it for us.
Amid the ongoing Israel-Hamas conflict, Wednesday saw worshippers hold Eid al-Fitr prayers outside the iconic mosque in the southern city of Rafah. Thousands also attended Eid prayers at one of the holiest sites in Islam, Jerusalem's Al-Aqsa Mosque. In Africa, Egyptians thronged mosques to offer Eid prayers.
Happy Eid. I hope that the coming days are pleasant.
In Southeast Asia, Indonesian Muslims gathered to mark Eid on Wednesday in the Aceh province. The occasion, one of the two major celebrations in the Islamic calendar, is celebrated by more than 220 million people in Indonesia, which is the world's largest Muslim majority country. And in India, people were seen offering mass prayers at mosques and exchanging greetings in the states of Tamil Nadu, Kerala and the Union Territories of Ladakh as well as Jammu and Kashmir. In these regions, the crescent moon was sighted on Tuesday, but in most of the places, this festival will be celebrated on Thursday.
आज 10 अप्रैल को रमज़ान मुबारक का आखिरी यानी 30वां रोज़ा पूरे मुल्क में मुसलमानों ने रखा और कल यानी इंशाअल्लाह 11 अप्रैल को पूरे मुल्क में ईद मनाई जाएगी.
President of India Draupadi Murmu has greeted fellow citizens on the eve of Eid-ul-Fitr. In a message, the President said, "On the auspicious occasion of Eid, I extend my greetings and best wishes to all citizens living in India and abroad, especially our Muslim brothers and sisters. This festival marks the culmination of the period of fasting and prayer during the holy month of Ramadan and gives us the message of love and brotherhood. This festival promotes unity, forgiveness and charity. Eid is the occasion to help the poor and deprived people and share our happiness with them. This festival motivates us to lead a peaceful life and work for prosperity of the society. On the auspicious occasion of Eid, let us spread the feeling of love, kindness and compassion." From bustling street festivals to vibrant cultural performance, the spirit of Eid al-Fitr is palpable in cities and towns worldwide as communities come together to celebrate their rich cultural heritage. The crescent of the new moon signifies the beginning and end of fasting during Ramadan. It was during this month that the Muslims believe the first verses of the Quran, Islam's holy book, was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad. During this period, Muslims are required to fast and to give to charity, to show kindness and patience, and to strengthen their relationship with God. Mihir Makuri's report for DD India.
In sports news now, athletics is set to become the first sport to introduce prize money at the Olympics, with World Athletics saying on Wednesday that it would pay $50,000 to 48 gold medalists in Paris. The move is a symbolic break with the amateur past of the Olympics in one of the Games' most watched events. In modern Olympics, which started in 1896 in Athens, athletes have not received prize money from the International Olympic Committee. The prize money will come out of the share of Olympic revenue that the IOC distributes to World Athletics. A total of $540 million was allocated to the 28 sports at the Tokyo Games, with World Athletics receiving the most at $40 million. On to chess now. India's D. Gukesh managed to secure victory over Nijat Abazov in a queen endgame to surge to the top of the standings of the open section as the Candidates 2024. The 17-year-old from India managed to win a marathon game against Abazov in round 5, which played on for almost 6 hours and saw 87 moves being made. Gukesh, the second youngest player ever to compete at the prestigious Candidates tournament, is now the joint leader in the open category with Ian Nepomniachtchi at 3.5 points. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of DD India News Hour. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and Instagram. You can also check out our website ddindia.co.in. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. From all of us here in New Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.